you watch last year's state championship win for Duncanville, the first time they got one over on North Shore. Colin Simmons is unquestionably the best player on the field, and there's like 23 other FBS prospects out there. So he's a really good football player who's played really high-level football. At Duncanville, you're playing against, a lot of future offensive linemen in the NFL. A couple of that, have been on the Texas roster right now. And so he's tried and true. He's really good. He can get off the edge. He can do a little bit of everything for you. And I think if you look at Texas's roster, that's probably the one spot where we're kind of questioning what they have there. So a big get if they're able to land him, and a kid who can probably come in and be a pass rushing specialist pretty quickly.
Yeah, that is a big news. Colin Simmons out of Duncanville committing to Texas, the number one defensive end out of the 2024 class. Defensive end has been one of those problems for Texas in the past few years, and it's been getting better. You've seen more rushing. Of course, DeMarvion Overshawn rushing off the linebacker spot. You kind of see him play a little bit at that edge rusher. So there's been guys that have stepped up in that role recently. Jalen Ford, I'm sure, will step up in that role some this year as well. But you haven't had that real edge rusher at a top level for several years. I know several years back we had the problem that, no one was even getting 3 sacks. We didn't have anybody with 3 sacks on a season. If we get someone to come in and get us double-digit sacks in a season, if that's where Colin Simmons' potential could take us, it's a wonderful thing. If you missed the announcement, of course they do it big. The kids today like to do it big. So he did the ceremony, thanked everybody for coming out, thanked everybody for thanked his family and then his brother and everything else. And then, that all being said, I decided to take my talents. We had a guy come out with the LSU hat, puts on the LSU hat, says no, takes it off, picks up the Miami hat, puts it on, says no, and then asks his little brother, and little brother has the Texas hat underneath the table, says he's taking his talents to the University of Texas. It's a very big signing, and it's another one of those marks for Coach Sark and what he's able to do here at Texas, what Sark is able to do recruiting-wise. Now we know there's a lot, and we'll get into what he has to get into do coaching. We'll get into that in a little bit. But for what he has to do to be able to get the fan base pumped up, to be able to get the type of players in. And look, we know he's not a defensive coach. So, being able to recruit and again, having PK be able to recruit a guy like Colin Simmons and want to be part of this team. And we know Colin Simmons is already trying to recruit some other guys to play on this defense, to pick this defense up to another level. And your best recruiters in today's game are the players. So to get another 5-star player on this roster is another big recruiting step as you go into the SEC next season. But when you look into what this signing is for Texas, what this signing of how it plays out of in the scale of the last time Texas got a defensive lineman of this level, that was what Rod asked Mike Craven this morning on E and Rod B. And here's Mike Craven trying to think of the last time Texas got a recruit this good on the D-line.
Yeah, if we're going just on ranking, Corey Redding, maybe a Sergio Kindle, those kind of guys. Joseph Osai became that dude. I don't know if we thought he would become as good as he was just because he was so new to football. Osai didn't know what football was until he was 10 years old, when he watched it with his uncle. And so I don't know if he was as polished as Colin is. But, yeah, a Corey Redding, Sergio Kindle, like those kind of guys. This is a legitimate 5-star top 10 player in the country, not just the state type of kid.
There you go. That gets you a little bit more excited. Does that get you a little bit more pumped for the season? And I know this is 2024. But it gets you a little bit more pumped for that Alabama game because you're going to the SEC. That right there will tell you that is it's a big move for Texas. It's definitely one of the fun things to see coming in. Getting that news today. All the reports were all trending towards Texas. LSU, of course, is definitely another one of those names that is Brian Kelly's done a great job recruiting over there. Miami, the problem with Miami was the money. We don't know if that money's right now, but another school that could easily go to. I think it's just it was a very good signing for Sark. It's another signing to kind of give this class this year, and I know they're very focused on this year, and they'll talk about it. We have some player audio for you later today and some Sark audio for you later on the show. they're focused on this year. But whenever you get that news and you get that, and okay, now we can go and for guys like Malik Murphy or an Arch Manning, some guys that are a little bit deeper on this bench, or Jonte Cook, or somebody like that who's a younger guy, or maybe even Anthony Hill that's coming in and saying, man, this defense I could be part of something really special on this defense. It's very cool to get that signing today with Colin Simmons out of Duncanville, the 5-star defensive end recruit choosing Texas today. I do want to get into some Texan stuff. I know it is preseason. It is not the biggest game, but this is a Texans preseason. So this is a game where you're going to see there's not a lot of guys that are really going to sit out. We may see a Jerry Hughes not play because, he's a more well-known guy. Denzel Perryman may not play. There may be, I don't know how much Blake Cashman's going to play. You assume he's going to play some. Once you get in that secondary, Jimmy Ward may, he's a safety out there. He may not play a ton. Some of the older guys may not play a lot in the preseason. But they have a lot of young guys. You expect Will Anderson to get some serious reps in the preseason. You expect C.J. Stroud to get some reps in the preseason. And so watching a Texans game could be interesting. It could be, and I want to give you some position battles. And they're not even really battles because early in the preseason, we're not even talking about who's going to be a starter. Because Texans just don't really have a lot of depth, so you can kind of figure out who's going to start at a lot of these positions. But it's positioning on that depth chart and who's going to be getting targets. And if we're talking about that, we're going to have to talk about the wide receiver core. Because Robert Woods, Nico Collins, John Mechie, Tank Dell, Noah Brown are all pretty much sure things to make the roster, right? They're all looking pretty happy and pretty good to be a part of this rotation of wide receivers. And it seems like it's going to be a rotation because you just don't know. But who's going to stand out in this preseason? Who's going to show early on that they have a connection with C.J. Stroud? We've heard before that C.J. Stroud said that he wanted Tank Dell. C.J. Stroud said, man, Tank Dell, go get out and get him. Once they drafted C.J. Stroud, he told the Texans, I really like Tank Dell. If you get him, they have a good rapport. Does he build up something there? Does John Mechie come out and he starts to progress? Do we see that through this preseason? Does Nico Collins, is he able to take the step of playing against number one cornerbacks? And you may not be doing that in preseason, but is he able to get separation and be able to do what he did last year against these number one guys and find the rhythm with C.J. Stroud? And is Robert Woods going to be able to be the guy? This is a big opportunity for him. He's been a journeyman pretty much now at this point in his career, traveled around, been on several teams, and not been able to make it stick. Can he be a veteran to this wide receiver core? And then Noah Brown. Look, we know if Cowboys fans, we've watched Noah Brown, and you see sparks, and maybe he's got something. Maybe there's something there, but it never really came to fruition in Dallas. What is he able to do? Watching those guys, not so much in necessarily just looking at a box score, but watching how they break out in routes and watching how they're able to get separation and watch their timing with C.J. Stroud especially is going to be something to keep an eye on throughout this entire game against the Patriots. And we know Bill Belichick's not going to show you a ton. He's going to be trying to just figure things out on his defense. So you're going to be able to get some. You're going to be able to get some plays. Who's got the speed? Who's going to be a deep threat? All those things you're going to try and figure out by your wide receiver core. And then we go to quarterback. We know C.J. Stroud. Look, I know DeMeco Ryans can say C.J. Stroud is not, has not been named the starter yet. He's starter week 1 in preseason, but he hasn't named him week 1 for the regular season. That is what DeMeco Ryans has said so far. However, I think we all kind of know the writing on the wall is the question is then Davis Mills or Case Keenum. Can Davis Mills be the backup quarterback? Because if it's Davis Mills versus C.J. Stroud, I don't see why you put Davis Mills in instead of C.J. Stroud. We know it. But can Davis Mills become the backup quarterback over Case Keenum? Or does Case Keenum show what he's done earlier in his career? He's shown what he's done in Houston before and be a very serviceable, good backup quarterback. I want to watch the difference between Davis Mills and Case Keenum in this game. Can Case Keenum come in and play with some of these younger guys and still show off what he can do? If Case Keenum comes out, doesn't have any turnovers, doesn't make any bad plays, moves them down the field a little bit, and Davis Mills is not able to do that, I think you see Davis Mills move down, I think you see Davis Mills maybe even play less minutes in the preseason because they may try to salvage Davis Mills as a trade option at some point if there's some other injuries and say, hey, man, this guy, he's actually pretty good and he's actually smart. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that if he continues to struggle in the preseason. You may just have to stick him down at the end of the bench. But I'm not looking for the C.J. Stroud versus Keenum or C.J. Stroud versus Davis Mills. I'm looking at Mills versus Case Keenum to see if Davis Mills can become that, solidify himself as the number 2, show progress over last season, show something there. That's what I'm looking for in that position battle. And then it's center. Center's a little bit weird. Juice Scruggs, rookie drafted. He is a guy they wanted to eventually put in that role. Scott Queensberry was the starting center going into camp. He tears his ACL and his MCL at the beginning of August. So he's done. He's not coming back, we don't believe. So you have to then go into, is Juice Scruggs ready to be a starting center in the NFL with a rookie quarterback who you are going to have to try and protect? You need the clean handoffs. Can you build something and say, is he good enough? Is he ready enough for week 1? If we put a rookie quarterback out there and we have a rookie center, do we feel he is ready enough that we will have growing pains? We know there's going to be growing pains. We know there's going to be growing pains with C.J. Stroud too. But are they good enough? Can they build a connection that, man, maybe this is a center quarterback connection for the next decade in Houston? That's what you want. That's the best end. And the lines of it is this somebody that we can feel, because of the injury to Scott Queensberry, that we can stick him in and see what he does and go through the growing pains this season? Can we do that with Juice Scruggs? That's the question I want to see tonight. Does he play at a level? Are the quarterback, whether it's shotgun, whether he's under center, you assume it's going to be a lot more shotgun. That's just kind of how a lot of NBA, NFL action is today. So, and I mean, look, and honestly, we're going to want to see how Bobby Slowick calls a game. I know it's preseason, but we've never seen Bobby Slowick call a play. So who doesn't want to see that? But I want to see Juice Scruggs, see what he can do at center, see his connection. If we have the connection there with C.J. Stroud, it is going to be, and all you need is for him to not get lost in it, be able to pick up things, be able to do some small things, and I think that'll be fine enough for him to be the starting center, and you'll be able to use him for as long as you can into the season. But I just need to see that he is not messing up some easy snaps. The situation is not too big for him in the preseason, because we know it'll be even better when the crowds are full, the stadiums are packed with people, and it's getting loud, and you're playing on the road, and things get tough. Then we just mentioned you want to see how this game is called in offense and defense. We've seen DeMeco Ryans call defense. He mentioned it. He talked about it the other day. That basically, look, I don't have anything to hide with how I call my defense. I don't have anything to hide about how I call defensive plays, because this is who I am. You've seen it. That's in San Francisco. That's what we did. I was play caller there. Defensively, I was doing that. That's going to be the same stuff we're kind of doing here in Houston. But Bobby Slowick on offense, is this going to be a run the ball? Is he going to try some different things? Is he going to be trying to tank it downfield? What is Bobby Slowick? What is he? Is he more Mike McDaniel? Is he a more LaFleur? Is he a more Shanahan? Is he somebody completely different? Is he a mix of all of them? How much are you going to see in week 1 of preseason? You expect to see a ton. But to see how Bobby Slowick calls, and then to watch on defense, I will give you something to watch on defense. And there's going to be some lapses in this defense, because it is DeMeco Ryans trying to teach a new a system to a bunch of guys who are young, a bunch of guys who maybe haven't played in a system like this before. There's going to be some learning curve, and you're going to see where guys are missing assignments, basically. So watching who misses assignments, who's constantly where they need to be, who doesn't get blown past, who doesn't get there. So maybe not as much even who's wrapping up the right way and who's getting the tackles and who's able to play defensive back. That's stuff you can watch for, but you're watching for that in every game. Just watching for guys that don't look lost out there on defensive points. When you see a guy standing and you can go, oh, he's 8 yards away from where he's supposed to be. That is something you can want to watch for in this game. And then for C.J. Stroud, I told you earlier, I'm not worried about watching him lose his number one spot. I don't think that's going to happen. Here's DeMeco Ryans of what he is looking for in C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, from CJ in this game, I just want to see a guy come out and command the huddle, command the offense, get us lined up, get everybody on the same page, and just operate efficiently.
That's it. That's all you want to see. You want to see him come out. He's played in much bigger games at Ohio State. You want to see him come out and just be the leader they need him to be, to not have any moment be too big for him in a preseason game. Come out, no jitters, and just say, look, I am your week one starter. That's all I need. How he throws the ball, things like that, sure. If it's bad, it's going to be bad. I don't expect it to be bad. I need to see him, though. I need to see him command the team. I need him to be able to get the team back. I want to see him not making the faces when someone drops a pass. You want to see him pick him up. We don't need to see any Manning face. We don't need to see, no offense to Arch, we don't know if Arch has Manning face. We don't know if he has resting Manning face, as Peyton and Eli clearly do every time the receiver would drop a pass. You want to see him show the leadership skills, pick this team up, and become the guy that you feel can start week one and be able to go. That's what you want to see out of C.J. Stroud. And what we want to see out of C.J. Stroud leads us to our Big Fat Poll of the day. Thanks, everybody, for joining in the Big Fat Poll yesterday. The question was, who is the worst owner in American sports history? You guys voted, and you voted for Donald Sterling. He was a pretty terrible guy. Dan Snyder up there. Marge Schott, I think people just didn't know her as well. And Artie Moreno, or Jeffrey Loria, I'm sorry, was our fourth option on that one. And that was what I know people went to Bud Adams and some other guys that have moved teams. Art Modell, guys who moved teams tonight. That Jeffrey Loria did that as well. So I put him in because he was hated by two separate fan bases. He is hated by the Montreal fan base. He is hated by the Washington fan base. He is also hated by the Miami fan base. So he is basically hated by a lot of people. So I put him on that list, did not get the voting. So I need your help. Today, we are not giving you a question that we need you to give us the choices. I need your reasoning. I need you to give me good reasons for why you are picking who you are picking in this poll. Let's get to Patrick's Big Fat Poll today.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day on the Horn.
Big Fat Poll of the day here on a Thursday. Which rookie quarterback will have the worst preseason? I'm going to give you four options. We're going to go with the top four quarterbacks taken: Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. Anthony Richardson was named the starter for week one preseason as well. We believe Bryce Young will be that. I do not know if Will Levis will start. We know he will play. We know he will play in these games. So we're not looking at the full season yet because I don't know who's going to play. Will Levis may not see the field his entire rookie season. We assume the other three will. But I can't ask the question until we get into the regular season of who's going to be starting, who will have the best or worst rookie season. But who do you think is not ready even for preseason, is going to go out there, who's going to throw some picks, who's going to look stupid, who can't move the ball, who's going to be the problem, who may get sacked, who may not be able to pull it off? Which rookie quarterback will have the worst preseason is the question. And I want you on the text line, 512-337-3776. Tell me who you got and why. I want to get to that because I'll read off those answers here in a little bit. Who you got and why of which rookie quarterback will have the worst preseason. Bryce Young in Carolina has a lot of new players out there. He's learning a new system. C.J. Stroud, you're going into a Houston system that, I mean, you have a play caller who's never called plays before, trying to run there. Anthony Richardson, we know all the potential. Some people say he's going to be the next best quarterback. Some say he will be the best rookie quarterback drafted this year. Others say he's going to be a bust and he's not going to be any better than any other mobile quarterback that doesn't have it. Some people say that. And Will Levis, we know, dropped out of the first round. So who do you think it is? Is it one of these guys? Does one of them step up? Let us know. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. Tell us the question of the day. Which rookie quarterback will have the worst preseason? Tell us on the Specs text line. We come back. I got some Sark audio. He was on the Jeff Pate show, the Late Kick with Jeff Pate. We will play some audio from Sark. Get you maybe we can get you some more Kool-Aid on a day where Colin Simmons, the number one defensive end in the country, commits to Texas. We're going to be feeding you some Kool-Aid today, and we'll be keeping up with the Texans as well. Coming up here on The Horn, 1019 AM 1260, The Horn app, hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Musical theme of the week. Best debut singles from some of the biggest bands around the world. And Pearl Jam there with the Live kicking off their first major single for our debut week here. We'll have 512 Friday tomorrow, so we'll be playing some local music tomorrow, but keeping it going with the theme of the week. All week we've been playing bands and their debut singles in honor of our debut week. I told you we had some audio coming from the Jeff Pate show. That's the Late Kick with Jeff Pate. He had Sark on his show the other day and talking about Texas football, trying to get some more of that Kool-Aid on a day where Colin Simmons commits to Texas. We do have some clips from that we want to play for you. And let's start off with just kind of Sark's opening statement talking about the program of Texas as a whole. This is just kind of an overview from Sark about Texas, from where they've come from the end of the season last year to training camp to now where they're at, getting closer and a few weeks away from actually playing football for real.
Well, I mean, I think naturally you get that first inkling in spring ball, right? You find out about kind of, guys when they come back for the next season and just kind of where they're at from a mentality standpoint. New leadership needs to step up, how you're going to start to fill roles. And then in the summer, I think is when you really start to get a gauge for it, especially now with the new rules where you can work with them a couple hours a week. And you start to see the culture start to form and the leadership, the work ethic that it takes in summer conditioning. And then when you get back to here now to training camp and you start to see the growth, like I talked to the team about, I'm not trying to hold anybody to what they were a year ago or the way they performed in spring practice, because everybody should be improving. And if we're all improving, then we should have been made, really, really good growth from last season, this past spring, even this summer, to where you feel good about it. And that's something for me that's been exciting. I really feel like every player on our team has improved their play and it continues to improve it.
That's kind of one of the themes in this that he says is leadership. It's about taking the standard and the culture of a team up to another level. And I mean, that's one thing we'll give credit to Sark for, right? And we give credit to Sark for a lot of things. Clearly, he's a great recruiter too, but we want to give him credit for, I'll give him credit for really putting in a culture of a higher standard football team. Now, to get to where it really needs to get, you have to reach the standard, because you can't instill a culture of we're not going to be the team until we're a double-digit win team every year, until we're competing for a conference championship every year, until our name is in the playoff talks every year. Until you're there, that's where the standard needs to be at Texas. And that's the culture I believe he is instilling, but he just hasn't gotten to the point where his ability of calling plays and the ability to get these guys coached up, and maybe it was just he didn't have the players yet. Maybe it takes time, but you can't fully instill that culture until you are at that level. So you have to this year progress to being a double-digit win team. You have to progress to playing for a Big 12 title. You have to progress to being in a conversation for the playoffs. That way you can raise the standard even more and then keep it there. I've said there will never be enough credit given to Roschon Johnson for what he's done for this team of work ethic, leadership, and pushing this culture forward at Texas when it could have gone downhill and when there wasn't necessarily the right person to stand up. Roschon basically said in some interviews, well, we didn't know what to do, but we just started doing it. And that's the mentality you have to have at some points. And as you continue to progress as a team, you have to continue to say, hey, man, we may not have all the right answers, but we need to keep going. Sark talks about the difference, though, between year 1 to year 3 now, and how you're able to build on each year's, successes and failures to be able to build to the program and the standard that you want.
Well, it feels like hours now, that's not knocking anybody. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat in this profession, whether it's recruiting, developing your players, the schemes you run. But ultimately we all, you come in with a plan and you try to implement it. And year 1, you feel like you're you're trying to coach everybody on how you want it to go, whether it's recruiting, whether it's media, whether it's player development in the weight room, whether it's nutrition, whether it's your scheme. And then you're trying to build depth. And what does your depth look like in year one and the players that fit your scheme and for the style of play? By the time you get to year three, if you're doing it right and you're consistent with your approach to things, we should be pretty dialed in on recruiting. We should be pretty dialed in our player development in the weight room and how we rehab and recover players. And we should be pretty dialed in schematically of the way we go about our business and the way we practice. And so it does feel different. And you feel like the players are, like I've touched on, I don't think at this point now we can say the players are bought into what we're doing, right? You were trying to get that buy-in in year one. In year three, now I feel like our players are contributing to our culture and what we're about, and they're elevating kind of who we are.
There you go. The difference of year one to year three is there's no more buy-in, right? You don't have to buy in. You're either in or you're out. And we've seen that there wasn't a huge hit in the transfer portal. There was some, but there needs to be some, and there's supposed to be some. And it is one of those things of, when coaches get mad at the transfer portal, you're like, you also want some of your guys out every year to open up more scholarships, and you can bring somebody in that you feel is going to be a better fit. So it works both ways. But you didn't have a ton of attrition of transfer portal losing some top guys. You even keep a Malik Murphy because you're able to have that leadership in there and have people feel that everyone is a part of this team right now. So that right there, if you want to talk about the right mentality walking into a season and the growth of a team. And when you can look at some of these teams, when you look at when teams start to get built into programs at a higher standard, it takes that first class to kind of build the way. And you had those guys in Bijan and Rojo to help you start building that way. And now the next generation of guys, and we'll hear from Quinn Ewers, we'll hear from Jalen Ford in a little bit, those guys trying to take it to that next step. And just the ability of some of these guys to continue to build. When you have guys like David Benda on your team, and it's somebody like that who's been there for long enough to tell you what it means to be a Texas Longhorn and where he wants to go and how hard he has worked to get there. When you have those guys, you're creating a better place. And so you can get through that part. And I think Texas has done very well on that. But then you also have to have the players. And in today's game, there's a lot of passing. And we know that the Big 12 is not necessarily, as Rod always says, it is a running league masquerading as a passing league. But you better have a secondary that can stop running. It can stop passing. Here's Sark on the Longhorn secondary.
I really like our secondary. I'll talk about Catalon first. What a great addition to our team, never mind just our secondary. He comes with the real intent every single day. He's very mature. He's very meticulous in his approach. The passion is there. The communication is there. And then the playmaking is there. And I think obviously there's a level of physicality to his play that you have to have at safety that he definitely plays with. But we're returning 3 starters there as well. And Ryan Watts, Jaron Thompson and Jahdae Barron. And Jahdae has been a fantastic player for us at nickel, a guy who's been a playmaker in the run game, the pass game, creating turnovers. But we have a lot of really good young players too. Terrence Brooks really came on at the end of last season. We had an addition at transfer in Gavin Holmes from Wake Forest, who was a 2-year starter there. You look at a couple kind of high-level recruits in Derek Williams at safety, Malik Muhammad at corner, and then Jalen Gilbo actually was starting ahead of Jahdae Barron last year before a season-ending injury, so he's back. Not to mention a lot of other faces. So I like the depth. I like the mix of veteran players and the leadership they provide, but I also like some of the youth and the playmaking ability that they provide.
There you go. There's Sark talking on the Jeff Pate Show about a secondary. And if you talk about the secondary, it's a deep room now, which is what you want. You want as much depth as you can get because you never know where the injuries are going to come. And last year, I feel the depth was not there at the wide receiver room. And that was a huge issue. And, you can go on to whether it was coaching, which I think a lot of it was coaching, that they continued to throw it to Xavier Worthy instead of trying to give some of these other guys some more shots. And, he would have rather seen last year Xavier Worthy not get 7 passes that go to him in a row and then somebody else dropping 1. So I get it. The other guy maybe dropped 7 too. But we didn't get to see that. The wide receiver room this year, though, seems to be, as of right now, extremely stacked. Here's Sark on the Jeff Pate, the Late Kick Show with Jeff Pate, talking about his wide receiver room.
I really like that room. At the end of the day, I think that we've put a lot on Xavier Worthy for 2 years, and he came in as a true freshman. There was a lot on his plate, and he handled it and he took it and he had to know everywhere and move everywhere. And there was a lot, and he played a lot of snaps and a lot of reps, and Jordan Whittington as well. I think now with the addition of A.D. Mitchell, getting in a healthy Isaiah Nair, who we missed last year, who transferred from Wyoming, the addition of a Jonte Cook, the kind of steady play of Casey Kane being back, and then DeAndre Moore, Ryan Niblett. We've got a really talented room. I think one that where we can spread the field a little bit more, one that where guys aren't feeling like I have to be the one to make the play and Xavier's got to beat double coverage every play, because A.D. Mitchell's a good player. Jordan Whittington's a good player. Isaiah Nair's a good player. Jonte Cook can be a player, not to mention, how are you going to defend JT Sanders? And so ultimately, historically for me, when we've had our best offenses, we've been able to deploy people across the field that make it difficult for you to kind of pin down and hone in on. And in turn, the ball can get spread out when the quarterback knows to go with the ball. Guys can make plays in space because they're getting those one-on-one matchups.
There we go. There's Sark. And thanks to the texter. It is the Josh Pate Show. You're correct. I was reading the wrong name. Josh Pate Show. You're correct. Late Kick with Josh Pate. It was Sark on the wide receiver room. It is a great to hear Sark be excited about this, because we're hoping that this season is a season where Sark decides to throw the ball to a lot of different wide receivers, to throws it to the tight end, to include a Jonte Cook, to see what A.D. Mitchell did in the spring game, to the reports out of training camp that A.D. Mitchell looks amazing, to, of course, Xavier Worthy, to, of course, Jordan Whittington, and get him more receptions and more targets this season. There's a lot of positives coming out of there. And the best part is, the more you're able to use all of these wide receivers, the more you're able to use them throughout the regular season. By the end of the season, when you start going to some empty sets, which we know Sark will go into empty sets, when you start to go into those and you stick out 4 or 5 wide receivers and all of those guys can go make a play and people know, and you can't back off of anyone, that is a big advantage, because now it's not, okay, well, they're probably not going to throw it to the rookie. They're not going to throw it to the freshman who doesn't have, he hasn't really gone out there and played. They're not going to trust his timing with Quinn Ewers. They're not going to throw it over to Jordan Whittington. They never throw it to Jordan Whittington. He's just going to run the little out and he'll be a check down, but Quinn Ewers is going to throw it downfield. If you use all of your guys and everybody gets targets during the year, when you get to later in the season, and we're hoping, again, you are a 10-plus win team, you're playing in a Big 12 championship game, you're trying to get to these playoffs, the college football playoffs. If you can get there, you're going to need to have threats from many different levels. And being able to line up an Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, Jonte Cook, A.D. Mitchell, along with JT Sanders as 5 receiving options, that's insane. And then, hey, maybe we can stick someone else out. Maybe we'll have Keelan Robinson in the backfield, someone who was averaging 10 yards of reception last year out of the backfield. Maybe we can do that. I enjoy it thoroughly. I think that there's a lot to really love about this wide receiver room. I do want to play you a couple more sounds there from the Josh Pate Show. This is Sark on the biggest change in his coaching style, because this is something you need as Sark to continue to grow, to continue to grow, to continue to grow. I get it. We're all learning every day. We're all trying to get better and be a better person every single day. But in coaching, sometimes there's a big roadblock for some of these guys that they think they're doing it the right way. And man, it was just a situation. It was just the player, or it was just the call. And I don't need to change what I'm doing as a whole. And when you don't change what you're doing as a whole, it makes all the minor stuff and the micro stuff much harder to change because you feel the macro's right. So the micro, okay, well, you know what? You know what the problem was? I was running, 10% with 2RB. You know what? Let's do it 12%. That'll solve all the problems. And it doesn't come down to the being able to manage games late in games, which is the biggest problem Sark has had in the University of Texas. Here's Sark on the biggest changes he feels in his coaching style throughout the years of being head coach.
I think probably the biggest thing is just diving into the players, really having a connection with the players. When I was a young head coach at the University of Washington, it was about how am I going to squeeze every ounce of juice out of these guys and how are we going to win? And it was so focused on winning and kind of result oriented, if you want to call it that way. And now I think my connection with the players is such that, how do I pour into them in a way that is not always about just football, but about life and the impact that I can have on these guys on a daily basis to where we can develop that trust, connection, that ultimately will then pour into the way we play. And if we do it the right way and we play really well, we'll get the results that we're looking for. So I think that's probably been the biggest change is just connection with our players. And a lot of that for some guys starts in the recruiting process. For some of the guys, it's when they're here, especially the guys that you inherit. But inevitably, I think now I look back on my time, it's not having a connection with a handful of guys on this team. I feel like I've got a connection with all 120, and I try to be really intentional about that.
All right. You have a connection. You got a connection with all these guys, and you should be able to have a connection with them in the fourth quarter. And you should not need to rely on the guys that you only trust a couple. You should be able to rely on everybody then. If you have that connection with everybody, then we don't need to hear, well, I had to keep throwing it to Xavier Worthy. I had to keep doing this. And look, we're all hoping Quinn Ewers goes in. He's a first-round draft pick. He's a Heisman finalist. That's what we want from Quinn Ewers this year. But if he's not, if he struggles early, and if he struggles and can't get it together, you need to be able to say, well, I have a good relationship with Malik Murphy and move him in. I don't want that to happen. I want Quinn Ewers to be the guy. We got audio from Quinn Ewers. He sounds like he's ready to be the guy. But you need to be able to have that relationship that when you come into the fourth quarter, you don't only trust a few guys. You need to know who you trust the most, and you have plays that you're ready to go, but I need to see the adjustments, and I need to see you have trust in this team to make the plays to coach this team as a whole in the fourth quarter. That's what I want to see. Finally, I'll play one last one from Sark. He was on the Josh Pate show, the Late Kick with Josh Pate. Talking about leadership. It is the key that we will hear from Jaylan Ford later. We'll hear from Quinn Ewers. It is one of the biggest pieces of what they're saying is going to be a change in this season. And it's big. It's not as big as fourth quarter adjustments, but it's a big change. Here's Sark on the leadership.
Well, I felt it last year. I mean, I really felt it at the end of our first year when, we went through a rough stretch in my first year here, and there was a lot of tough losses, and we lost a tough game. And I'll never forget Roschon Johnson standing up in the locker room, and he asked to speak to the team and really to everybody in the organization that was in the locker room. And at that point, you could feel a shift. Like no longer was it just me trying to say what we needed to be. The players started to speak it. And I think that bled into last season. Roschon was a tremendous leader. Bijan was a tremendous leader. DeMarvion Overshown. The beauty of this year is I don't know if necessarily we have leaders like them or as good as them or whatever, however you want to call it, but we have more people in that space. And how do we get there? All the players that are here in year 3 in this program since I got here chose to stay, right? We're living in this world of transfer portal. But all those guys, the Jaylan Fords, the Jordan Whittington, the Christian Jones, the Jaron Thompsons, the Alfred Collins, the Byron Murphys, those guys started to believe in what we brought to the program. They signed up for something different, but they're believing in what we're doing. Then the younger players were players that we signed that believed in what we were doing and said, I want to go do that. And so now you really feel a locker room full of guys that are committed to what we do and how we do and why we do what we do. And so we have more people speaking the same language. I think at the end of the day, as coaches, we try to set expectations and a standard for how things should be done. Well, now the players understand what those expectations are, and they're speaking to the standard and what it's going to take. And then when somebody's not meeting that standard, they're holding guys accountable to it.
There you go. Leadership is going to be improved. We'll hear about it more later in the show. I love it. I love that this team seems to be tracked on the right pace to set a new standard at Texas, or a standard that's an old standard at Texas, but a new standard for Sark, a new standard for the last 15 years of Texas football. Reset the standard, let's say. Not a new standard, a reset of the standard here at Texas. They seem ready to do it. They seem willing to do it. The question is, are they going to be able to finish out in close games? That's a question. Because everything else is just talk until they can finish out in a close game. One of our texters is asking about with the recruitment of Colin Simmons, does it boost Texas into the top 5 in recruiting for 2024? No, it does not. I believe they're around 17 in most people's rankings. They are only at 16 recruits. Some of the top ones have 20, 23. So I could improve if they continue to recruit some more players. They could still get some more big names, but they are not a top 5 recruiting class right now from everything I've seen. So I'm not the most up on recruiting. I am not a recruiting expert by any stretch, but no, I've not seen them near the top 5, and I don't believe Colin Sexton is going to put them Colin Simmons is going to put them there. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll read some of your tweets about the big fat poll of the day. We're asking you which rookie will have the worst rookie quarterback, will have the worst preseason. You can chime in there with your answer and why. 512-337-3776. Which rookie quarterback will have the worst preseason? Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, or Will Levis? We'll read your answers when we come back here on The Horn, 1019 AM 1260, on the Horn app and hornfm.com. There you go. All right. New theme of the week is best debut singles from some of the best artists in the world. Got to slip in some D'Angelo. There you go. Some D'Angelo for you, the brown sugar. That's some good stuff right there. Let's get to our text, guys. We've been asking you the big fat poll of the day. Specs text line 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line to join the conversation. Which rookie quarterback will have the worst preseason out of Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, or Will Levis? The first 4 quarterbacks taken. You guys have answered the call on the Specs text line. We have Anthony Richardson, because he's not that good. He's just relying on his athleticism, and athleticism doesn't save you in the NFL like it did in college. We get another Anthony Richardson. His college stats were terrible, and his athleticism has fooled everyone. You know, I'm more curious about Anthony Richardson. I don't want to say that his athleticism is going to make him a bad quarterback. Just, we know he's very athletic. The question is, can he sit in the pocket long enough and make the reads and then use the athleticism correctly? I don't know. We will see it. I could believe, though, that the rook coming out early, trying to learn a lot, trying to make a big – I feel like this is a bigger step for him. But he may be the guy to do it. C.J. Stroud, because it's Houston, just hating – are you hating on Houston, or are you hating on the how bad it's been? Because I get it. I left the team for years because of dumpster fire it became. Are you hating on it because you're a Cowboys fan or a non-Texans fan and you're hating on it? Or are you hating on it because, yeah, you're right, Texans have been – their O-line's not terrible. I know Tytus Howard is out and you're starting a rookie center. We talked about that as well. They have some injuries, but their O-line, healthy, isn't terrible. So there's something positive there. Also, the wide receiver, of course, super young. We get a Will Levis in there talking about Will Levis reminds him of a skinnier not Russell Wilson, Jamarcus Russell, who he reminds him of, a skinnier Russell Wilson, but Jamarcus Russell. Jamarcus Russell, the great story of Jamarcus Russell being handed a DVD from a coach and told him, hey, look at all these plays and tell me which 3 or 4 are your favorite. And he handed him a blank DVD. And the blank DVD, he comes back the next day and he goes, hey, did you watch the film? He goes, yeah. He goes, so what do you think? He goes, oh, all the plays are good, man. He's like, I didn't put anything on that DVD. It's a great story. Hopefully Will Levis is not that dumb. Hopefully he's not. We get I mean, I don't see any Bryce Youngs. So no Bryce Youngs are on there. We see more Will Levis on there. Combine Warriors, Richardson and Levis. C.J. Stroud's got 1 vote on there so far. We got no Bryce Young, so nobody feels that Bryce Young. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's hard to believe that he will be the worst. So I agree with that one as well. It does seem like it's coming down to Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. We will see tonight. The game is about to kick off there. Houston versus the Patriots. They're doing the national anthem right now. For anybody who wants to put the game on while you listen to the show, clearly not telling you to stop listening to the show, and you do not have cable, you do not need NFL Network, you will be able to watch the game on KView. So you can watch the game there. That is where you'll be able to watch it in the Austin area. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will get into we'll talk a little bit more about Colin Simmons committing to Texas, the big news of the day, of course. And we have some player audios from player availability. Quinn Ewers and Jalen Ford, we're talking to me today. We'll get to that when we come back here on the Horn, 1019 and 1260 on the Horn app and at hornfm.com. Back here on the Sports Complex, hour 2 here on the Horn. We'll give it back and talk a little bit more. Colin Simmons committing to Texas, the number 1 D end in the 2024 class. Commits to the University of Texas. We'll get into that. Quinn Ewers, Jaylan Ford talked to the media today. We have audio from that as well. We'll play some of their sound bites. And we're going to get into some things about the Aggies, about Stanford and Cal, and the UFC. All that coming up here in the hour 2 of the Sports Complex on the Horn. Remember, join the conversation. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. 512-337-3776. If you want to follow me on Twitter or on X or on Instagram, you can do that at It's Patrick Davis is where to follow me. Of course, the big story of the day for anybody following Texas, following college football, the number 1 D-end recruit out of Duncanville for the 2024 class. Colin Simmons has committed to the University of Texas at the announcement today. We did have a texter that says he had, I said he had LSU, Miami, then Texas. Apparently he picked up a Texas hat and put it back down to make everybody think he wasn't going to Texas, and then pulled out another Texas hat. He was being a showman, but he is already working on the recruiting trail. And if you want to know what Colin Simmons can mean better than I can say it, Mike Craven joined E and Rod B this morning. They asked him about kind of telling people what Colin Simmons was about. Here's Mike Craven from E and Rod B this morning.
Yeah, I mean, he's up there as a pure edge rusher. You know, I think one of the more interesting things about Duncanville and Galena Park North Shore is they play each other all the time. And so, you know, for 12, 13, 14 games out of the year, you know, those kids dominate. They don't see a lot of guys that are as equal as them that they'll see at the Power 5 level. And then at the 6A Division I state championship game, you see, you know, North Shore and Duncanville go up against each other. You get previews of college matchups, and you can kind of start to identify which guys stand out even in those situations. And if you go back and you watch last year's state championship win for Duncanville, the first time they got one over on North Shore, Colin Simmons is unquestionably the best player on the field. And there's like 23 other FBS prospects out there. So he's a really good football player who's played really high-level football. You know, at Duncanville, you're playing against, you know, a lot of future offensive linemen in the NFL. A couple of that, you know, have been on the Texas roster right now. And so he's tried and true. He's really good. He can get off the edge. He can do a little bit of everything for you. And I think if you look at Texas's roster, you know, that's probably the one spot where we're kind of questioning what they have there. So a big get if they're able to land him, and a kid who can probably come in and be a pass rushing specialist pretty quickly.
Pass rushing specialist. Love to hear that. Get to drinking some Kool-Aid about going to the SEC. Going to make the move to the SEC much easier. If you're a Texans fan, C.J. Stroud has completed his first pass in preseason. Nico Collins to completion. They've already got a first down. I promise I won't talk about too much more Texans today. But big news: Colin Simmons, the 5-star number 1 defensive end recruit in the 2024 class, has committed to Texas today. So that is very big news. Very exciting to see. And a big piece of when you move to the SEC, you got to have a pass rush in the SEC. And adding Colin Simmons to that is going to help Texas have that, and could be one of those impact players that we've talked about throughout the offseason, that, you know, Texas is getting some big guys that may be able to have some bigger roles early on, and you don't necessarily expect that from a team that has had some success already. But basically anyone who's in there, if you can play, Sark may put you on the field. I do want to we have some audio from Quinn Ewers and Jaylan Ford. Met with the media today. Got to ask some questions. We have some of this audio. And I want to start off with Quinn Ewers. We know Quinn Ewers is not always the best interview. He means well. He's got his new haircut. He's got his fade that I wouldn't recommend for a lot of people. I think he may go back to the haircut he got after the mullet. But yeah, he basically said, it's too hot. It is too hot in Austin, Texas, so I cut off all my hair. I get that. He's wearing a helmet. I get that. But I want to talk about Quinn Ewers. And one of the things that kind of was a narrative throughout his media availability today was how much better he knew the playbook, which you can't say last year, hey, I'm not really familiar with the plays and I'm having trouble with that. Here's Quinn Ewers on the biggest difference between last year at this time and this year.
Yeah, for sure. Mainly just the knowledge of the offense. Because this time last year, I was still, trying to pick up the offense and certain checks and whatnot and stuff like that. And this year I can just kind of be more me and play more freely. And not have to think as much about, what does this guy have? It just automatically clicks, which is huge for my position because I can, focus more on fronts and keeping myself protected.
There you go. Just knowing the playbook, knowing, hey, man, okay, I can kind of read things a little bit better. Huge for Quinn Ewers. And I'm glad he can say, hey, I didn't know that as much last year, and it was a work in progress all season. I've now had this all season to go and sit through and work on this. I think that's a big step forward. And he was asked then about, okay, well, if you're a leader, if you're this guy and you now know the playbook, how has it been being a leader when you know the playbook now and you may be teaching other people that playbook?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier, especially whenever you're filling into kind of a leadership role. People will look at you a little differently whenever you're telling them what to do and whatnot. And it's cool, honestly. Football's a cool game. I kind of like to call it the quarterback. Like a quarterback, kind of feel like, I'm playing like a more maybe violent, more active chess kind of. So, trying to beat the defense with certain moves.
A more violent, more active chess. I like it. I like that the quarterback is thinking that he's playing a more violent chess, and he is trying to play it. He does say later in the interview that he does not play chess, but he is playing chess on the football field is what he is trying to do. I love it. I love that he is going for that. And he talks more about his leadership role now too, because we know that Quinn Ewers last year was somebody coming in and he had all the expectations in the world, but that doesn't necessarily make you a leader off the bat. We talked about it earlier with CJ Stroud about what he has to do of coming into the NFL locker room and being a leader. Here's Quinn Ewers talking about his new leadership role on this Texas team.
Yeah, kind of like what he was asking over here. I'm kind of I'm more comfortable, in my skin, and I'm able to tell people kind of what to do, and because ultimately, I'm around and we're guys who knows what it's supposed to look like, and I feel like we're really bought in this year, and I think that goes all the way back to how we treated this offseason in the winter and in the summer. I think this offseason, it was an offseason and it didn't really feel like an offseason. I think we kind of attacked it like it was a normal season, like it was football season. Like we attacked it with the right mindset.
I love that. We didn't seem like an offseason because we were working so hard basically throughout that offseason. That's a great thing to hear from your quarterback, to hear him as a leader, that he's at all these practices. He's trying to lead the way. You want to hear that because you are far behind. Because we've talked about it, that the standard has to raise for Texas. The standard has to raise. It has to reset to what it was 20 years ago. That's where you need to reset, or 15 years ago, let's say. You need to reset it to when you're in the national championship game with Colt McCoy. You need to reset to that standard. And to do that, you need to work in the offseason like you need more time, because you don't have the time to say, well, we can work through the last three coaches. You need to push that. So he goes through all the leadership, but then we talk about just playing on the field. And he talks about throwing the deep ball. And what is this change in philosophy on throwing the deep ball when we know Sark's going to want to throw it all the time?
Yeah, I think I've learned to not try to be as perfect and just give our guys a chance, because with the athletes we have at receiver, if you give them a chance, 8 out of 10 times, 7 out of 10 times, they're going to come down with it. So just give them a chance. It doesn't have to be the perfect ball every single time. That's really what I was trying to focus on.
Doesn't have to be the perfect ball every time. Give them a chance. It's a different philosophy. It's a good one to have, depending on what your idea of giving them a chance is. But it's about reading the defense and giving them a chance. And those are the two things. So when he talks about knowing the playbook, he talks about being able to read defenses. He's able to talk about knowing how to give a wide receiver a chance. He can talk about this. All three things need to be put together, though, because you need to be able to go out there, read the defense. You need to be able to put the ball where you need to put it. But you need to be able to you need to be able to do all those things in time. You need to be able to do what you're doing in practice when there's actually guys trying to kill you. Because right now, you get to wear the shirt, you get to wear the jersey that says don't touch me. You get to wear the don't touch me jersey. And you get away with a little bit more. it's when you have some guys, when you have a really good receiving core, you can have it a little bit more of, okay, I need to figure out where the safety is, where the cornerback is, and hopefully we're going to have them spread out enough because we got a JT Sanders, because we have Jordan Whittington pulling people inside. We have an A.D. Mitchell on a long route. We have a Jonte Cook coming out there and running a different route. So maybe Xavier Worthy can get open, and I can put the ball up there where I don't have to put it. If he's step in step with the cornerback and the cornerback's looking at him, he's able to make a move, and you're able to watch Xavier Worthy make a play on the ball. I like that philosophy. It only works, though, if you can read the defense and you can read where the safeties are and where the other cornerbacks are and know where you're putting the ball up. Those types of things for the deep ball you have to be able to do. He's talked about that enough, though. So that is the hope that he can get there. And he talks about reading coverages and picking up different formations and stuff like that from defenses. Here's him when someone asked him what was a play where it kind of stuck out to him in practice about what he's been doing and his improvement in being able to read the defenses.
Yeah, I would say it was today. We were in a tight end set. He was attached, and I saw double outside pressure, and I checked the protection and was able to get a completion. I mean, sometimes checking a protection, it's almost better than throwing a touchdown pass sometimes. But
that is somebody who sounds like they have thrown a lot of touchdown passes and not checked down a lot of protections. That's what that sounds like. Somebody's like, oh, this is a new thing I get to do. But you need to see that progression. So while it may seem, you go, well, yeah, you should have been doing this before. This is good coaching to get him to be ready for the next season, to get him go. And now it's to see if we can do it in game speed. I do want to play one more from yours because we talked a lot about the running back at Texas, and we talked about C.J. Baxter and what he's going to be able to do to be an elite back. But Jonathan Brooks is projected to be your starting running back. He did have some good carries last year. He had that big 70-yarder in Kansas. Here's Quinn Ewers talking about Jonathan Brooks with his media availability today.
He's a great player. I mean, obviously he sat behind, Bijan and Roshan last year and the years before. But I mean, he's a fresh running back. I mean, he had some issues, but he hadn't taken a whole lot of hits. And I've seen a guy who just wants to play football, just wants to be on the field with his guys and, contribute to this team. He's super bought in. I'm fired up for him.
How would you describe his running style?
Man, he's got it all. He's got big old legs. He can run through people, but he's also elusive in the open field, and he can catch passes. I mean, he's just an all-around back.
There you go. There's just a little bit more Kool-Aid about Jonathan Brooks and how comfortable Quinn Ewers is feeling with Jonathan Brooks. You need to have the comfort with your quarterback if you want to get all the snaps at running back. We know Keelan Robinson is going to get in there. He got in there for a good amount. I think he was the fifth leading receiver for the Longhorns last year out of the backfield. So we know that Keelan Robinson is going to get some. We expect C.J. Baxter to come in and make some impact, but this is Jonathan Brooks' job to lose. This is his job to lose. So if he can come in and play like that and continue to move the chains, that is going to be a big move for Jonathan Brooks. Jaylan Ford also speaking with the media today. Jaylan Ford is one that maybe gives us a little bit of sound bites. He is ready to talk to the media. And he wanted to talk. They asked him about, if he wanted to go play if he was, trying for the Buckets Award. He said, of course I am. They asked him about his motivation. And what's your motivation? You had a really good year last year. What's your motivation to come back and do it again this year?
Motivation, my motivation, as humble as I could be, is just telling myself every day that I wake up, I'm the best linebacker in the country. And coming out here and taking those steps, and at the end of the day or at the end of practice, I have to kind of reflect upon myself. Like, did I practice did I practice being the best linebacker in the country, or whether it's individual drills, whether it's team period, whether it's special teams, or how I encourage the younger guys. All those things kind of just me being the best version of myself that I can be.
There you go. You gotta love the motivation for Jaylan Ford is humbly, I'm one of the best linebackers in the country, and I want to prove it every day. Humbly. That's how you should. Those are the great players. Hey, man, I get it, and I don't want to sound like I'm coming off as a guy who says that I'm the greatest, but I'm the greatest. So let's just keep that in mind. You can ask me a question. Hey, you want to ask me, am I going for the Buckets? Of course I am, because I think I'm the best linebacker here. And then they asked him about, well, was it hard to make the decision to come back? If you say you think you're one of the best linebackers in college football, then that means that you think you're probably going to go to the NFL. Clearly there were scouts that wanted you out there. What's the reason? Why did you stay? Here's Jaylan Ford talking to the media today about why he stayed at Texas after the season he had.
I wouldn't say it was tough. I think I just was so focused on football, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, I never really, I'm the type of guy, I just like to play football, man. And it's like, all that other stuff is like, it'll come when it comes. And so, the pressure wasn't really getting to me. I think it was just like, I needed to make a decision. And I thought it's, I talked to a lot of people, and the biggest thought that I got out of that was just, it was a win-win situation, and to just follow my heart. So, I guess I could tell y'all that now, but pretty much the majority, even like during the Alamo Bowl, my heart was always to come back, just because I wanted to finish off. I felt like I had a great year, but I was just getting started, honestly, and unleashing my potential. And like he said earlier, last year I was a kind of unknown guy, and now it's like everybody has their eyes on me. So now it's like my motivation is to prove everyone right now. So,
woo, man, I love that. My motivation is to prove everybody right now. I had to prove them wrong last year. I'm going to prove them right. But he says he knew pretty much at the Alamo Bowl, hey, man, I'm just getting started. I want to be a legend. You have to love that this is one of the guys leading your defense, that somebody can come out and say, no, I knew I was pretty much – I get the money was there, but it was never really about money. It's about me and how well I can play. That is somebody that you want leading your team. That's somebody you want fighting for you every play. Jaylan Ford is somebody that you are just going to love watching this season. Somebody you used to love watching that has been hanging out with the team. Derek Johnson was hanging out with the Longhorns. And Jaylan Ford talks about how the impact of Derek Johnson coming around when you get to go with a bona fide NFL star player who was before his time in the NFL, but can come in and teach the guys today so many things and progress their years by helping them out. And for Jaylan Ford, it is a huge impact to have a guy like Derek Johnson come in and talk to him. Jaylan Ford talked to the media today about Derek Johnson helping out and showing him some stuff on the team.
DJ is actually kind of giving us a lot of cues and things he picked up, and he always tells us he didn't pick it up when he was our age, but he picked it up along the way, and having the success he had in his career. And I think just him being able to give it to us now is huge for us. And him, he's always in there, helping us, giving us cues. He's watching our film, coming back to us, telling us we could do this better, we could do that better. And I think it's really been a huge bonus to have him. Yeah, I know, to come around and punch it. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to perfect it. Yeah. How's it going? It's going pretty good. Yeah.
Man, if Jaylan Ford can get that come around punch out, if you can get some of those turnovers, I know PK talked about that some earlier this week. Last week he talked about trying to improve the turnovers for the Texas Longhorns. Love that. If you get that in there and get Derek Johnson, you can get Jaylan Ford playing that level, then he is going to win the Butkus Award. He's going to be a great draft pick. We know all those things. It's great to everything that Jaylan Ford, he's one of those guys that you listen to and it just gets you pumped up for the season. He did also say what he saw for Texas, what he saw from practice so far, that he would say, he wasn't necessarily expecting from this Texas offense or this Texas defense, what position that he thinks is going to step up.
One thing I say, just the pressure that our interior can create. We got guys like Sweat, Murph, AC, Vernon. Those guys have been really showing up so far for us in camp. And just the ability for them to hold doubles and, clog up all the gaps in the interior and kind of make the runs bounce outside. It's just been something that we've seen a lot. And it's not a bad thing. It's just something, as a linebacker, you have to play off them. So when you see things like that, you pick it up and you kind of, go with it and, start to learn how to play looking forward into the season.
So Jaylan Ford saying, hey, man, our interior D-line is playing at a level that then as a linebacker, I can sit back say, man, maybe the pressure they're getting inside means I can come in on the inside. Maybe I can come on the outside. Maybe the way I'm thinking about how this defense is going to react and where I need to be on the field may be different. There's still hope that Gary Patterson could come back and be part of this organization somehow and help you out, because we know that he definitely helped out a lot last season with game planning for the Big 12. We know that PK took a massive step forward in year 2. And at Texas historically, usually the guys who really blow it don't have they start off really well. And then it goes downhill once people figure it out. PK seems on a somewhat different trajectory, that he is aiming forward, and he's progressed last year. If he can get progress again as a defensive play caller and defensive coach this year and make that defense at another level to make up for some of the 3 and outs you're going to have and some of the plays where, maybe you have a turnover or something because you're going to be trying to throw the ball more on an offense without Bijan Robinson. You may have another fumble or two. It's just a reality of what could happen at Texas this year when you lose Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. I know Bijan had a costly turnover in a game. I know that. But in the whole, Bijan Robinson was not a fumble-prone running back. Neither is Roschon Johnson. So if we say both of those guys are not really causing you a lot of turnovers, you're going to try and put the offense more on Quinn Ewers' shoulders. You're going to have young running backs in Jonathan Brooks and C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue. And can those guys go protect the ball? And if they don't, and maybe you get in some situations that are not favorable, is your defense going to be able to play at the level to keep you in these games and then allow Sark to blow and push it away? Are you going to be able to build big enough leads? I mean, hell, we've seen Texas, get 2 touchdown leads and they're not enough. Are you going to be able to play good enough defense to go, hey, man, we held them to 10 and you put up 40. All right, we had a 30-point lead going into a fourth quarter. Hopefully we won't blow this one. Because that really, at the end of the day, is what it comes down to, is are you able to play well for 4 quarters? And if you aren't in some of those games, are you going to be able to play well enough in the first 3 that the fourth quarter it's already said and done? That's a real somewhat of a problem and solution for Texas. I don't want it to be that way, but if that's the way it's got to be, if Sark is going to have to try and run people out of the building, that's not the best way to coach. That seems like a flawed way to do it. But if that's the way you got to do it, because you're one of your biggest weaknesses as a play caller and as a coach is play calling and adjusting in the fourth quarter, then you need to try and rack up the score as much as you can. You need the defense to try and hold them as much as they can before you slip into a prevent defense and let them put up 14-21 on you. So hearing the players today, it was great to hear the amount of respect and leadership, the work that these teams have put in. And it just gives you a little bit more Kool-Aid, but we are definitely getting to the time where it's about to be put up or shut up time. And that's what's really getting exciting. So as much as this is exciting on this end, as much as it's exciting to get Colin Simmons, it's much more exciting that we're getting closer and closer to actual football. And I can't wait. We come back. We got some stories that we were not able to get to in the rest of the show. We'll keep reading your text on the Specs text line, 512-337-3776. Tell us what you think there. Join the conversation, 512-337-3776. We'll be right back here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Got about 30 minutes left in our show. Just, you know what? I missed playing random stuff on the air and freaking out Harj and Rod. Today I got to play D'Angelo and Wu-Tang Clan. So, it feels good. We're playing for our debut week. We've been playing songs of great debut singles from some of the biggest bands in the world. And Wu-Tang Clan, debut single, Protect Your Neck. Oh, it's great stuff. Good stuff. We go from Wu-Tang Clan to College Station. I don't know if there is any further reach than the Wu-Tang Clan to College Station. There's probably one, but I don't know what it is. The news came out today that the Aggies have suspended the 12th Man Plus Fund. It is part of a narrative that is going around college football right now that many of these this is basically their NIL charitable program that the Aggies had, similar to the Texas One Fund. Not the same thing as the Texas One Fund, but similar. And both of the Texas One Fund and the 12th Man Plus Fund were 501c3s, basically tax-deductible charitable organizations. And the IRS basically has given all these charitable organizations. They had the paperwork. They had everything filled out. They seemed on the up and up. Everybody was pretty happy about it. And then as time went on, people started to get reports, and they were seeing guys driving around in nice cars. And they went, well, this money. So the guy's talking about the charity work, but the post isn't about the charity work. He's posting that he's just in this car that he bought with the money that he got from this charity. And it becomes, optically not great. And so you have to be able to do enough actual charity work to be able to feel that you can go to the IRS and not have a problem being a 501c3. So far, the Texas One Fund has not done anything. The Texas One Fund, we know, does a lot of charitable organizations, helps out a lot in the city of Austin. I think it would make sense that in a city, bigger city like Austin, it is easier to do more public activities with your players, to be able to do camps and to be able to do things for the Texas One Fund and help out the community more than a College Station that is a college town. And it's not a shot at College Station. It's like any college town where there is a community around it, but the central economy of the city is basically the college. Whereas in Austin, the central economy of Austin is not University of Texas. So you can spread out the wealth a little bit more. So I don't know if Texas One Fund, I'm sure they are meeting about this, but this was basically a letter sent out by the IRS to all of these, because it's not just Texas and Texas A&M who do it. Texas and Texas A&M just raise some of the most money out of anybody else. And so those are guys getting the biggest tax breaks, is how much money you can raise on those. So it is something to watch for going forward at Texas. I know there was already talk of the state laws, where the state laws basically say you can do whatever you want. This isn't the state laws. This is the IRS. And if anybody knows, that's the one thing you don't mess with. You can mess around with the police. You can mess around with government, national. You can mess around with the federal government. But if you go after the IRS, they're coming for you. So this becomes something for the Aggies now. Are you able to continue to get – now most of your money for Texas and for the Aggies is going to be bigger donors. However, to have the smaller donors be able to put the money in and make it tax exempt and to be able to help out their tax situations is great. So it is something that is an interesting point of where college football and the NIL marketplace is going to go, is how many of these are going to be able to stay? Is Texas A&M going to be able to get back up? Is this going to hurt the recruiting when Texas comes to the SEC? Will this continue to piss off Aggies fans? That's what we're hoping in Texas, right? So it is it's a interesting world of how you find the loopholes or not even loopholes, how you find the way to put the phrasing and how much money do you funnel to the players and are making sure the players, I know that's one of the hardest parts of any of these NIL initiatives, and anybody who's paying NIL is trying to get the players who you give the money to, because that's kind of the deal, and then go, oh, by the way, you need to come do this event. And they go, oh, well, no, you already gave me the money, so I'm good. I don't necessarily go to the event. Texas has been pretty good about trying to get players to do that and putting people in place to do it. One of the reasons why they did the Texas One Fund is that it was becoming harder to do it, and the Texas One Fund made it a little bit more centralized to get everybody on the same page and make it easier to do that. It is something to watch for in the coming weeks. Another news story coming out that Stanford and Cal to the ACC has hit a major roadblock. Now, there's been roadblocks before. The Pac-12 was going to be just fine and until Colorado leaves, and then they're going to be just fine. And I'll wait until, I'll believe when I see it. And then we see Oregon and Washington, they bounce, which means Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah, they all decide to bounce. And they go back, and now the Pac-12 is dying. We talked a lot about it yesterday about Washington State. Just, maybe we can salvage it. And this is the thing for Stanford and Cal. Stanford and Cal are the only programs left there. Washington State and Oregon State don't matter. I mean, I don't want to be, that cut and dry about it. But if we're talking about TV rights and media deals, Washington State and Oregon State do not matter to any major broadcaster of, man, this is going to bring us in tons of dollars. That they're not doing. Now, Stanford, yes. Cal, yes. Stanford's academic ability, and Cal has it to an extent, could help out a conference improve. Notre Dame, one of the reasons they said they were really interested in bringing in a Stanford and a Cal to the Big Ten, which we know Notre Dame as football is an independent, but as their other sports are not independent, they are in the Big Ten, or in the ACC, excuse me. And the ACC, they say, well, with all this talk about academics not mattering in college sports, and the future of college sports is about money and not education, which is the way it's going. That's the way it's going to be. So I get they want to fight that because, that means you got to pay the football players more. And by the way, if you were able to in 2023 start your own football league but with college and split it off and not have to pay the players, it would have already been done. They would have already done it. And the problem is, hey man, we got to pay the players and we have to get insurance and we have to follow all these rules. Now we have to have a CBA. It becomes a much bigger problem. So that's the reason they don't. It's because the system is already set up for the people who are running it to succeed and to profit very much. So if you look at it that way, I get why Notre Dame says, hey, we're trying to keep up appearances, and adding a Stanford and Cal makes the ACC's academic numbers, where we have UNC, who clearly doesn't care about their athletes going to school. We saw that report come out a few years ago, and the NCAA didn't care. We can bring these guys in, and these guys are going to be able to help us raise our academic standards. They say, yeah, but we also don't want to share the money because we're already way behind the SEC and the Big Ten, and now the Big 12 are behind them. And you want us to split up our money even more, and we have a deal till 2036? We can't split this deal up, and that's where the roadblock has come in. That basically all these smaller schools that need this money really bad, they need the profit share, they need that sharing. They're not as worried about that. They're the schools that, Florida State wants to leave behind. They're the schools that that Clemson or somebody else may want to leave behind and go, let's get the hell out of this ACC. Our money deal sucks. Our TV deal sucks. Let's go somewhere else. Those are the schools that are keeping it from bringing a Stanford and a Cal. In all reality, the ACC, if you want to run it like a real organization, I know you can't do this fully, but kick two of these schools out. Go have fun. If you want to run this like a business, the way it's going to go, that's what you need to do. But the problem is now you have to fly across, and we know Stanford and Cal didn't want to do that. I think the reality of the situation is going to be Stanford and Cal and Oregon and Washington State, Oregon State and Washington State are probably all going to end up in the Mountain West, and the Mountain West is going to try and build a bigger brand and be one of the biggest group of 5 schools, which I don't know if you're a group of 6. I don't know how that works because we keep saying Power 5, but if Pac-12 is gone, does the group of 5, does Mountain West try and absorb them and then maybe try and pretend that they're going to be a Power 5 and try and be the lowest Power 5? Is that what could happen? Because Mountain West is over there. They're the school. They're the conference that could pull it off. Do they have the leadership? I don't know who's running the Mountain West. We know George Kliavkoff killed the Pac-12, so get him out of there. But that's something to be a look at as well. Do you try and merge with the Mountain West, with the Pac-12, and basically kick out George Kliavkoff? And you may still call it the Pac-12 because the history's there. And you basically go to the TV deal and go, hey, we don't have a TV deal. We'll take the Mountain West TV deal, but we're calling it the Pac-12 now. That TV deal you have is going to be great. And then in a couple of years, we'll renegotiate it and we'll get a really good deal. But we'll keep our trying to be a Power 5. We'll keep that facade that we're a Power 5 instead of a Group of 5 school. That may be where it has to go. Is you screwed up. You didn't want to match with the Big 12. You said kick rocks, Big 12, and they went off and helped kill you. But the Mountain West may be the conference to go. I don't know the other conference that you're going to find that has the players and the money and the talent to be able to add you and be in that area and make sense financially. I don't know the one. But Mountain West may be it if the ACC is not the case. Now, the ACC may still be the case. I don't think the Big Ten's going to come calling. I know if the Big Ten comes calling, they're not going to offer the money that Stanford wants either or Cal wants either. They may end up doing it. The Big Ten may say, you know what? You're not getting a full share. We'll give you a prorated share for coming in. But if that's not the case, Stanford and Cal, man, for being academically advanced schools, you seem really stupid right now. I know. You're probably saying, well, what does it matter? There's sports. It matters. Millions of dollars. You should have thought of this. You should have gotten someone from a business school to come in and say, hey, by the way, the future of football is this. The future of making money in collegiate sports is this. You need to go jump on that because right now I don't know where you end up. One more story we'll get to before we get to last call. A judge has approved and upped the level of a case against the UFC by several of the fighters who have fought with the UFC for years now. He has upped it to a class suit. So it's not a class action, but it is a class suit, allowing many more fighters who have fought till, I believe, 2017 to jump on, basically claiming that the UFC is a monopoly and they have used their market share to keep other businesses down and to fight TV deals for other places and places where where fighters may get a more fair shake, that they're keeping they have basically cornered the market on this and are not paying a fair wage to their workers. This is the basic principle of this lawsuit. It could possibly be over $1 billion settlement if this is how it goes. This is still going to take several more years. But it is something interesting to watch because we've seen it with Francis Ngannou going to start his own group, which he calls the Gimmick Group, which I love, his gimmick fighting promotion, because Dana White said, you know what, I don't do gimmick fights. He also said he wanted to do Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. So the guy talks out of both sides of his mouth. He also said that anybody who is any domestic violence needs to be punished thoroughly. Then he hits his wife on a camera and doesn't do anything. He just apologizes. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. I'm not a huge Dana White fan. Let's put that out. But I get why these people in the U.S. or in the UFC why they're fighting for it, because they're the running backs of professional sports. And I know running backs are the running backs of professional sports, but we will put them as they're in that category of people whose what they do to their bodies destroys their body for years. They get all the brain injuries, everything you get for it. You take years off your life of the training, of the fights. And they know, well, we can basically hold this carrot out in front of you just long enough that we're able to make all of this money off of you. And right when you get there big enough, we know we can let you go. And the main part of the main time where you could have cashed in, we've already used your prime. And we have you under contract and we'll hold you up in court and we're going to screw you because we know we can do it. And so you'd love to see some resolution out of this where the fighters get paid a little bit better. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Dana White understands that there's always going to be guys behind that really want the position. And he understands that what UFC does better than any of those other promotions is promote. They are great at building up these fighters to be something very special. And I think he knows that. So he is not necessarily worried about getting the best fighters in the world because Conor McGregor, that's fine. I don't need him to. And you know what? He can go fight for someone else. And what's everybody going to say? That was a great UFC fight. And when Francis Ngannou fights, that's why these guys also want to do boxing instead of MMA. Because they know if you do any MMA, it's UFC. But if you box, it's not UFC. But any MMA to the mainstream audience is going to be UFC. And the UFC will profit, and they know that. So we'll hope that there's more to this story. But in reality, I don't know if I'll still be on the air when this story happens. It could be several years until this happens. So, I mean, it's a lot of fun to look at right now. It's, anytime you're going to make Dana White angry, anytime you get to piss off Dana White, I'm a big fan of. Again, I'm not a huge fan of Dana White. Somewhat of a hypocrite, in my opinion. Makes a lot of money for other people beating the crap out of each other. And he's just kind of the jerk who doesn't mind being the jerk. So hopefully there will be some settlement and we may have the end of that era and they'll pay him, slightly more to get long-term brain damage. We're going to come back with last call here on Sports Complex. If you have anything you want us to plug coming up tonight, hit us up for the last call. 512-337-3776 is on the Specs text line. If you've got an event happening tonight, a show we should need to check out online, or just a game we need to watch, what series is good, and what's happening around town, hit us up. 512-337-3776. We'll be right back here on the Sports Complex on the Horn. Wrapping things up here on the Sports Complex on a Thursday. You know what? We'll just say C.J. Stroud completion. His first was a completion, and we'll leave it at that until we get into it tomorrow. But not necessarily the best start for the Texans. What do you expect? It's going to be a long year. It's going to be a long year trying to be back as Texans fan. Time for last call here on the Sports Complex. A couple of picks for you. Of course, Texans and Patriots right now. If you don't know what channel it's on, it is on your local KView affiliate, wherever that is. Whether you have the actual, if you have cable or if you have just the rabbit ears, you can watch the Texans playing right now. They are playing till 9 o'clock. And then later tonight, you will have Vikings and Seahawks on NFL Network. A couple shows to check out. Moving Panoramas are at Hotel Vegas, and the Waters are at the Pershing. Tomorrow, we'll have a 512 Friday, promote some more local music. May have a guest on talking about a big show this weekend. And we'll get into lots more great sports content here on the Sports Complex. Thank you, everybody who played along for us on the Specs text line. Follow me on social media at It's Patrick Davis. Have a great rest of your evening. Be safe. Take care of each other. Keep your underwear clean. And we'll see you tomorrow right back here on the Sports Complex.